All right, David, so the next thing we're going over is end tidal, capnography.
I am a big proponent of end tidal.
So
I love end tidal.
I really think it's probably one of the most underutilized tools that we have.
I totally agree.
So before we really get into the world of capnography and how to use it on this monitor, let's talk about just the general why and what we're looking at. So what are we looking at? And when we talk about capnography end tidal, what's the numbers? Why is it relevant?
So the beautiful thing is the state of Georgia put out a fantastic class for end tidal CO2 that I think Larry's trying to make everybody in the department go through. But to answer your question, 35 to 45.
35 to 45, right?
And that's showing on a cellular level, the oxygen is actually being utilized. I always like to say the fire and the smoke. So the CO2 is the smoke, and it will actually show that the oxygen is being utilized on a cellular level.
So it's gas exchange, right?
Totally.
Which in hindsight is realistically perfusion. So if you're in that 35, 45, and you're going to have a waveform, we'll show you what the waveform looks like. If you have those two parameters, it tells you, is the patient perfusing?
Perfect. Yep.
Doesn't mean they're not sick, but they're perfusing.
Yeah, they're getting enough oxygen into their body, and it's being utilized on a cellular level.
Right.
More importantly, the brain and the heart.
So now we talked about what we're looking at. Let's talk about application. So what type of patient will we use this for?
I use on every respiratory patient.
Yep.
This pulse ox to me is the secondary. This is the primary because I can actually see, are you ventilating appropriately, and are we getting oxygen through that ventilation, and are you utilizing it on the cellular level?
Yeah, so you actually see respiratory effort.
Correct.
Something a pulse ox will not give you.
No.
And I'll tell you too, like I was taught going through paramedic school, going through EMT school, a one-word definition for shock is what? Hypoperfusion, right?
Yes, sir.
So when you start talking about that, that measures perfusion status.
Yes, it
So
does.
think of any patient who has a perfusion issue. Shock, which are reactions, trauma patients, respiratory patients.
Drug overdoses, all
Any of them. It's an important number, right?
Yep.
So we talked about what we're looking at. We're talking about who we apply it to. Now let's talk about the devices themselves and how we actually hook it up to the monitor. So we have multiple devices. For the purpose of the video, we're going to talk about one of them. So the one we're talking about is actually a nasal inline filter. It looks like a nasal cannula. It's green. So let's go ahead and open it, David.
All right. The nice thing about this is the adult and the pediatric look the same. So you're going to have a nasal cannula that we can actually give oxygen through. We can also do the sampling of their exhale for the CO2.
Right.
So there's our O2 port. But this is the piece that's important for the end tidal.
Yeah. So do you have to have oxygen to get a carbon dioxide reading, an end tidal reading?
No, you don't. No. But we have the oxygen on here, so that way if we notice based on the pulse ox and the end tidal and the waveform, hey, if we need to oxygenate them, we can.
It's additional option for a treatment plan.
Additional.
So I will say, fun fact, this is the only thing that will transfer over to a Metro Puckett monitor. Out of everything that we have, this is the only thing that you can disconnect and reapply to their monitor. So just fun fact for everybody that's watching. So as far as actually applying this, is there anything we need to do to the actual monitor itself prior to us hooking it up?
So the biggest thing is remember, it's going to be in the pouch, and it's hard to get to.
Right.
Yes. The nice thing about this is it's not a physio where you have to actually warm up a device or anything.
Okay. There's a trap door. It's even labeled CO for carbon dioxide. That door will come down. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Spin it. We're going to turn the monitor back over to where you can see the screen. There is a CO2 button. It's the third one down. You're going to select it. When you do that, your screen is going to change. You're going to have some different options. You're going to have a waveform, and you're also going to have a number with a respiratory count. I will tell you, as goofy as it is, David, sometimes it's hard to get a true respiratory count. That's going to give you a definitive every single time. Now, is it the main purpose of it? No, but it's going to give you a respiratory rate. So now Dave is breathing for you a little bit. So if you look over here, I'm going to look at the number first. I'm looking at this side of the screen where my hand is, right there. So if everybody can see the 36, that should tell you the actual end tidal carbon dioxide as carbon dioxide as you're reading, right? We want that 35 to 45. He's within that normal limit. If you look below that, the 8, that's the actual respiratory rate. The red 8, that's what you're seeing. And if you look below that, the very, very bottom, that's your actual waveform. Now I'm going to do this simultaneously so you see the numbers. I'm going to put a pulse ox probe on David's finger. What I want you to see is, again, we talked about this pulse ox. We talked about it can be a misleading number. It's reading oxygen on that arterial blood. That's what it's reading. It doesn't mean it's reading the respiratory effort. Capnography is going to give you the exact what's going on as far as their actual respiratory effort. You might have someone who, obviously in respiratory compromise because the mechanics aren't working well, that pulse ox will hold. It'll stay still. I want you to see the side by side to see how quick that capnography is going to give you, hey, something's wrong.
I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna hold my breath. My pulse ox will still stay in the 98s, but watch this. This will dump immediately.
You can see that wave source starting to diminish. And if you look, again, that pulse ox is maintaining. That waveform is going diminishing to the point to where it's going to recognize it's not breathing. Instant. We have a 0. His respiratory rate is 0. The actual waveform itself has completely declined.
It low alarms, but this pulse ox was still 98.
That capnography, that end tidal, is going to give you instant feedback. What's another example like capnography in itself, why we could utilize that? Cardiac arrest, is that important?
It is. You actually will see on a cellular, if they're using oxygen, particularly on the heart or the brain, you'll actually see your end tidal start to come up.
Yep, so if we get a pulse back, you're going to see an
I would
decline.
expect my end tidal on a cardiac arrest with somebody not perfusing, I'd expect to have at least a 10 to 15. And then all of a sudden it starts climbing. I know somewhere on a cellular level, we're utilizing oxygen and have an actual changing the CO2. So we're now looking at somebody coming back.
So we talked about cardiac arrest, and we're going to segue right into airway management, right? So is end tidal, capnography, important with airway management?
Oh, it totally is, because this can actually tell you if I happen to be intubating, yes, my tube is good. I've actually got a complete circuit, and I'm actually being able to ventilate.
So if you have an appropriate placed endotracheal tube,
Yes, sir.
you should get some sort of end tidal reading on that.
I will have a waveform and at least an end tidal greater than 10.
Okay, and that's very important, right?
It totally is.
So we're playing worst case scenario here, right?
Yes, sir.
Can those devices fail?
The end titles?
Yep.
Oh, totally. But once again, this is just a tool to help assist us. We're still going back and checking all the breath sounds, no epigastric sounds. We're going through our DOPE acronym. If all of a sudden this goes through, we're saying, is it displaced, obstruction? Do I have a pneumothorax? Did it go into the esophagus?
And you went the exact route that I wanted you to go.
So, yeah.
It's all context. Why is there an issue? Remember, hey, if we're doing airway management, we want that number. It confirms where we are. But double check everything.
Yeah.
Breath sounds, gastric sounds. If you have to, look, we have the capability with the laryngoscope, with the new device, UE scopes, you can have McGrath, to actually displace and look, is it in the cords?
Correct.
It could be the device, meaning the end tidal, that you need to swap.
Yep. It could be.